Okay.
And then, so you mentioned this already, but this is, I think, a huge highlight is because it's a commercial note, you're going, it's B2B. So Dodd-Frank does not apply.
Does
Like
not apply.
there are no rules there. And even like you said, you're in Georgia, and I double checked this, and you're right. But again, because it's B2B, uh, Georgia usually has requirements about needing a debt collector's license, but because it's B2B, that does not apply either.
You hear that,
Correct.
note buyers? We're always worried about debt collection being a huge, because for those who don't know, typically when you create a note, even if you buy a note in certain states like Georgia, you have to have a debt license. But when you're doing a business, you're in a different realm of it.
Exactly.
And you
Mhm.
can do all this without debt license. This is awesome.
And yeah, if you are, if there are many other type of loans that we do that are not necessarily for flippers. So you could have situations where someone just needs, for example, a bridge loan where they are an investor, they maybe are setting up an Airbnb and they
Mhm.
can't get a loan, a regular bank loan till they have some history in Airbnb. So we can give them a loan for the 12 months typically that is needed in order to create that history. But again, you on the loan like this will probably go 70% loan to value. So you have a very secure, nice property. This is already cash flowing. Uh, other uh, other cases are some people sometimes have a short-term need for cash in order to buy quickly some properties, and you can cross-collateralize among a lot of the rentals. And the old in these cases, having a rent rider, which basically means that you can, if they don't pay the mortgage, don't even have to foreclose on them. You can just start
Wow.
collecting the rent.
Mhm.
And the rent, you just make sure that the rent will cover more than a mortgage, and so to give another remedy there. So there's a lot of different type of notes again that you can have with very interesting rates, and you have a lot of freedom to uh, structure it in a way that is a win-win situation.
Mhm.
Awesome.
So then
Just
you're
reminded,
looking
someone
to,
asked what commercial note is. This is talking about a note that's a business to business transaction, and whatnot. And this will all be on replay on YouTube and our podcast. So if you get lost, let us know and just take a look at that. We had a question regarding what's your concerns on the fact that a lot of people have fears of repairs and properties and stuff like crashing. Do you have a lot of defaults? How is that? What's going in your world for that?
Okay, well, there are some situations. Well, first of all, I never just yet had a property that actually was fully foreclosed, but we do have approximately a little, 3 to 5% of the loans where there is some type of delay, maybe of a week or a few days or something. So the main concern can be of, uh, to your point, what if something happens that was not predicted at the beginning? Well, number one, we ensure that the borrower has enough cash to sustain 10 to 20% uh, extra expenses on the budget. Secondly, on extensive budgets, so on simple budgets where they just have to change kitchen, change flooring, or painting the house, they're very simple. We just require that. More
Okay.
complex, if they're doing some additions, etc., we actually already include a contingency of 5, 10, or 15%, depending on the project. So we kind of know statistically that there's a certain amount that needs to be reserved for. And then, if you, as mentioned before, we do have a very conservative loan to value. So we have had a couple of cases of, we have had two cases where there was a major foundation issue where they
Um,
actually were do extensive amount of work, but because we ensure that they had the expertise, the cash, we typically have cross-collateralized other properties with
okay.
that. Then if we were very conservative, they still went through okay. And from time to time, We have given, we also give them good referrals, and we also have other customers of ours that are GCs, that are contractors. So we have kind of a local community. We know the municipalities very, very well. So we have neither, while this stuff can happen, between the reserves, the resources that we can give them, and the conservative valuation that we do, we never had to really foreclose.
Okay.
Very interesting. So now the question for all these greedy note buyers out there, these sound pretty great, and it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity there. Are you selling any of these loans?
Yeah, so sure, absolutely, absolutely. I'm selling loans. How we operate is we have a limited amount of capital that we use in order to originate a note right away, and then we try to sell it. Now, sometimes the note pays fast enough, or sometimes we do loans that are very, very short term, but otherwise our business counts on selling around 80% of what we originate.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is when you say you can sell an 80%, you create a note at say 12, 13%, you can sell that at 80%. Hear this, note buyers? This idea that you can buy a 13% yielding note at 80%.
No,
Right?
that's not what I said. I said, around, let's say 4 notes out of 5 we sell. Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
gotcha.
4 notes out
Gotcha.
of 5 we sell, and 1 stays in the balance sheet.
Gotcha,
What we
gotcha.
typically do is, yes, we will sell the notes a par, and
Okay.
typically what people will want to do is we can completely service the note for them if we want to.
So
Another
what
op
does that look like to service a note? Because I'm going to say most note buyers, me and Nathan said this before, we're lazy, right?
Mhm.
We have to manage the rehab, manage that stuff. You're saying that if we bought that note from you at 14%, whatever it's at, that you'll continue to maintain that when we
Sure,
service the property.
absolutely, absolutely. Absolutely. I continue servicing. And one other thing that we do, it's much more manageable on commercial notes. It's when we have a larger note, we actually fractionalize it. So what that means is at times you have money that you would like to invest. You don't have, it's hard to match dollar for dollar, especially for people that have an IRA account that their Ford is locked. They might have $42,577 in it, and they will always have unutilized cash because of that. Instead,
Yep.
if you buy a participation in a note, on a fraction on a note, we can also manage that for you. So you can buy just a percentage of the note, we'll retain the rest of the note, and we can just pay you proportionally for your note. You could also go as far as decide to differentiate your investment, and instead of buying 1 note, you might want to invest in 10% of 10 notes, and that would allow you to have not only fully serviced, but it will allow you to have diversification of your risk without having to go in a fund which you don't really have any say what's happening next. You can choose the notes you want, and you can choose how much you would like to invest.
Wow. For those who want to be passive, it's an opportunity. What typical yield are you offering to those people who want to get some money rolling?
10, 11%,
Okay.
something there, netted of, my servicing fees. And yeah, that's it. And then if they know on one end, they know that probably they'll get the money back much sooner than in other places, but there will be always other notes for them to invest in.
Okay. And are you only doing this in Georgia? Or are you doing other states?
Well, I would say probably 95% is in Georgia. There are 2 reasons. Number one, we know the collateral extremely well, and
Okay.
we also have a lot of local resources. And if there is ever a situation where there is a distress situation, we can always have another customer of ours that will buy that property. So
Hmm.
that's another mediation that we have had very often. Something happens to the borrower, is a good property, is a good project. The borrower feels like it's too much for them, or something happens to them, we can sell it. So because of this, we create a lot of efficiency. And we're really retaining Georgia. Secondly, Georgia is really a great state. If you need to foreclose, you can literally foreclose as a non-judicial in 2 months. And then
Yep.
you get a property with a lot of equity. So that we know how to manage at that point. Never happen, but if it were to happen, we can manage it very well, and we can manage it locally with our own resources.
Yeah.
So we stay in Georgia. I would say
Georgia's
95%
awesome.
of, yeah, 95% in Georgia, probably 90% in Atlanta.
Okay.
Hmm.
Georgia's a great state to foreclose in because of the short period of time. It just,
Yeah.
for note buyers who buy residential, you have to worry about having a debt license. So that's awesome. Now, when you're how are you finding these assets? How are you finding these people who need money to fix up a property?
Well, they really have a lot of word of mouth because we close very quickly. So very often they, in order to close quickly and close on properties that need a rehab, they can't get a regular loan. The banks will not finance a loan, they will not finance rehabs, etc. So there's a lot of word of mouth. And as the word of mouth go, obviously we have some competition. And so what we do is we will adjust and kind of customize note by note a little bit of our products in order to match what the need is. But how we find it has been really word of mouth. As we started a business, and we started with some marketing, the response was so overwhelming that we had to stop. We didn't have enough money. That's why we started selling notes. But even with that,
Gotcha.
we need to, we're growing, but we cannot afford to have more volume than we're already having.
So I'm
Okay.
curious how you like, it seems like it's almost kind of a hybrid between a first and a second in the due diligence phase. Because on a first, generally we're just looking at the property. Like I'm much more concerned on the value of the property, making sure there's equity. And on a second, you're much more interested in the borrower, making sure that they have the ability to pay and kind of that history. And it seems like these shorter term notes is a bit of a hybrid where yes, we're interested in the equity and value, but we're also looking at the borrower and looking at their ability and I don't know, track record or something. So how do you do that? Like, am I right? Are you looking at both
Sure.
things?
Oh, absolutely. So definitely the value is very important. Now we do look at the credit. We do run LexisNexis background check, but but we also look at the prior projects they did. So typically, some of the issues or repairs or gaps in the scope of work or not doing the correct valuation are really done by newbies. And so with that in mind, we will look at the projects they have done before, and we're very careful to land to people that didn't do flips before, or didn't do a similar project, or didn't do an Airbnb before. In
Right.
that case, we really cherry pick the deals to only the people that can bring even more cash to close, that even a higher credit and a lower leverage. But yes, we definitely look at the person both on their credit and background check as well as their experience.
So you're pulling personal credit, you're pulling personal W-2s. You're not just based off the company, you're doing it based off the property as well as that borrower. And are you, if it's a partnership, are you getting personal guarantees from them and their spouses, or how do you kind of ensure your safety on that?
Okay, well, we definitely get personal guarantees from the majority members. So typically there will be loan. We do not necessarily look at W-2s because we want them to already have all the cash needed to do the project, because the interest payments at this yield are going to be very hard to be sustained in the long term. So and very often these people are professional flippers. So they do
Mm.
multiple projects. That's their full time. So they don't have a W-2,
True.
but they do have an experience of all the projects they've done and how much they earned. So if we do not count, we typically do not, unless we have cross-collateralized with rentals that have a good rent history, and then we can count on the fact that we can collect rent ourselves for them. But otherwise, they need to have all the cash up front in order to sustain all the financial obligations. And they need to have enough experience to demonstrate to us they can finish the project. That's typically how it works. Now, other exceptions can be maybe if there is an apartment building, then, well, that's again is rental, and we know that after they do some fixes, they could start renting very quickly after 3 or 4 months. So we might be okay with them having just enough cash for 2 to 3 months, and then knowing that some of the rent will come in. But in general, they need to have all the cash up front demonstrated.
Awesome. What's been your biggest worst situation you've been through with a property? What was a story that you kind of shake your head and say, I've learned a good lesson from it?
I'll give you 2. Okay, I'll give you 2. So one of them has been, this happened twice. I went into a meeting to discuss the loan in both cases were 2 ladies, and they were there with their husbands. And the the 2 wives appeared, this was 2 separate loans, appeared to be just the only borrower, and the husbands was not involved. And in reality, that was not the case. And what I found out later is that the wife had a good credit, and the husband wanted to really run the project. And because the wives were the only, in fact, one person in my team did tell me, there was her main job was a delivery nurse for babies, and then she's like, this colleague of mine said, it's weird that she doesn't look like the type of construction person. And sure enough, her husband started running everything, and even though she signed a personal guarantee, she had a perfect credit, she had the cash, etc. Her husband started running everything, and he was definitely a person that was not a good borrower, very difficult to work with, and some criminal past and things of that nature. So I had to deal with a very, very rough couple of situations when he had a scope creep, and he wanted me to do a low modification to cover that scope creep, and I said no. So that was kind of a very stressful story. Very similarly happened with another loan, a very difficult person to work with. It just appeared out of the woodworks right after. So the rule there for now has been whoever participates to an initial meeting, we typically have a Zoom call with our borrowers to go through the project. Whoever is in there, we want to run them all, because obviously whoever is in there has an interest in the transaction.
And what's been your best story or best return?
Oh, I've had one 2 weeks ago. Well, we charge points. So, we charge points, and someone needed for a very large apartment building to lock a certain rate. And, we're talking about a downtown $100 million building, and they needed $300K to lock a rate before closing. So I gave them for 4.5 points, so the 4.5% fee of $300K for 10 days, and they gave it back. And it was secured in this case, was secured by a true commercial property. They own a